2016 has been one of the most tumultuous political years on record. The Brexit referendum, the election of Donald Trump in the United States, but also the fall of established leaders like Dilma Rousseff in Brazil or more recently Matteo Renzi in Italy. All these events deeply resonated in the minds of international investors across the globe, and there is a widespread feelings today of uncertainty. Natasha Turak, Global Markets Editor of FDI magazine, you have covered extensively throughout the year many of these events. Let me start with Brexit. There is an ongoing heated debate in the House of Commons about the details of the government plans to actually make Brexit happen. It looks like Theresa May is committed to trigger Article 50 in March. What is the feeling, the sentiment among investors before these latest developments?
Well, that would depend largely on the sector you're looking at, but obviously there's a lot of uncertainty, which is never good for investors, and that uncertainty has manifested itself in frustration, particularly in sectors very important to London's economy here. So the tech industry, for instance. This week, London hosted the Tech Disrupt conference, during which many tech entrepreneurs and investors expressed their need for clarity on what Brexit actually means. Theresa May's government has been very hesitant to reveal any details about what's happening in order to sort of strengthen their hand going into EU negotiations. However, things like immigration laws, access to funding from the EU, these things are absolutely pivotal to the tech industry, to the startup industry, to the finance industry. And you have, CEOs, you've got entrepreneurs, investors who are saying we essentially feel like deer in the headlights. And an interesting statistic for you, in London, 40% of tech companies and tech startups have at least one founder that is not a British native. So you can see how talent and also how access to VC funding, much of which comes from Europe, is critical to the success of this industry and to London keeping its crown as the top center for startups and for tech in Europe. And we are seeing that this could potentially change. However, at the same time, London has received far more investment in this sector than any of its rivals in Europe. So essentially, in this sector alone, it just represents how much uncertainty and how much frustration there is going forward. But it looks like it might be a while before we find out what happens in terms of immigration laws, in terms of the free movement of people, capital, passporting rights. And at the same time, as soon as Article 50 is triggered, Europe essentially has a stronger hand than the UK does. So what Europe will offer in these negotiations is also completely uncertain and anyone's guess at this point.
Definitely, this is obviously will be the key issue defining the political agenda also for Europe going into 2017, even though Europe has to deal today with a number of other political crises of very, very delicate situations. Italy, for example, so yesterday, December 7, Matteo Renzi officially resigned after the referendum of a constitutional reform that he really campaigned for, advocated for months. And now there is nobody really knows what will happen next. Italy is basically swinging between the perspective of a new transition government or the perspective of new elections that will eventually most likely see even more power in the hands of populist parties like the Five Star Movement. If this happens, this will obviously play in the hands of other populist or far-right leaders or anti-Europe leaders in Europe, like Marine Le Pen, for example, in France. And there are obviously elections in France are coming up in April. There are also elections in Germany next year, elections in the Netherlands. So it's a very, very delicate situation for Europe, and definitely the political situation in Italy will set the tone for the political for the political agenda in Europe in 2017. But let's move on to across the ocean. Donald Trump. Today it's been exactly 1 month since the November 8th election day. and we all know how that ended. And now it's been Donald Trump has already made clear key appointments within his future government, and has already disclosed on pretty general terms some of his future policies. What are your impressions so far?
So the election of Donald J. Trump, the bombshell of 2016. Well, obviously this election has cast a lot of confusion and a lot of uncertainty over markets and over the future of global trade and FDI. Now, Trump's agenda and Trump's promises through his whole campaign was, of course, to put America first. He railed a lot against globalization. He threatened to raise tariffs. So there is a lot of, this has definitely shaken the international business community. It's shaken our trade alliances. It's shaken the foundations of things like NAFTA. And so experts and business leaders have warned against a trade war, saying that this could be disastrous for the global economy. It could throw us in another recession. However, many more populist leaders and more right-wing leaders who seem to be on the rise in Europe have lauded Mr. Trump's isolationism. At the same time, the business community, you can tell there's a sort of hope holding out that as a businessman, Donald Trump might be pragmatic as a leader. So he's already promised increased infrastructure spending, massive tax cuts, easing of financial regulations, which could offer at least a short-term stimulus for the American economy. It could create jobs. It could increase FDI into the United States. So Donald Trump has also offered a one-time 10% repatriation tax on $2.6 trillion of foreign profits from U.S. companies. So this could obviously spur growth as well. However, it looks like it would definitely hit the national debt very hard. So you have these things. I think there's a little bit of optimism in terms of the future for business, at least in the United States, but there's also a lot of fear in terms of protectionism. We've seen it on the rise, not just in America, but all over the world. And global trade volumes are already down this year. So that is sort of yet to be seen. And at the same time, we really don't know what he is going to do, because a lot of the things he says he will do, he so far, you know, the wall with Mexico or Obamacare, already a lot of things he's sort of reneged on or sort of moderated his tone. So really the bluster and the threats, there's only so much that those can do, but whether he will actually take action on those and follow those through is yet to be seen. So all we can do really is watch and wait and hope that 2017 is a little bit more predictable than this year, but chances are it probably won't be.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. Stay with us and follow the coverage to come for 2016 in FDI magazine. Thank you.